Coming up after the news, it's People Fixing the World. This week, we're looking into the Sneakernet, a network of people who are using the shoes or sneakers on their feet to carry some of the vast wealth of knowledge that's available on the internet to places that are offline. We're meeting the man who carried some of the internet into the remote Himalayas.
Many times, the first page that people would open would be the Wikipedia page of Danskar itself. Find out probably how the world viewed them from the outside.
And the teacher, who's downloading stuff at the cyber cafes, so he can teach new things to the pupils in his school in Malawi.
So this is the computer laboratory. The students would sit here and access the information from the Raspberry device. Hello guys.
We're going inside the Sneakernet. That's all coming up on People Fixing the World after the BBC News.
BBC News with Simon Emery.
With each other. Then a little radio station that you could pick up on the Wi-Fi. They got school kids to make radio jingles. Broadcast Buddhist prayers in the morning. And there's even a local stand-up comedian who broadcasts some stuff. Now, the little network in the valley has had its ups and downs. It's broken a couple of times, and Anish has had to try and mend it remotely. But overall, he's certain that he's had a positive effect on that little community.
In that space and in that time, when I see this kind of engagement happening, I think something good of it will come down the line. Something good of it will manifest.
Okay, so that's one Sneakernet project. But there are hundreds more out there, using all kinds of offline systems to do all kinds of things with varying degrees of success. Because the information is from trustworthy, independent organisations on the internet, it helps to overcome the mistrust the refugees feel for what others in the camp are telling them. And they can get the information without leaving their shelters.
So it's very crucial that we use offline server where the real information reaches out to the community people.
The final thing that I want to tell you about is an education project that's running in Malawi. It uses a lot of the parts that we've heard about already. A Sneakernet, a magic Wi-Fi box, and education software from Learning Equality, which in recent years has been improved to include all kinds of tracking, feedback, and personalisation stuff. But before we hear from the people on the ground, I want to stop again for a second, just to look at the bigger picture. Because some projects like this work, and some just don't. They end up with dusty tablet computers sitting unused in backroom cupboards. Taskeen Adam is a research analyst with the EdTech Hub, who's been looking at how education systems have been responding to the COVID pandemic around the world.
A recent UNESCO report actually stated that 90% of countries are trying to make some attempt to support offline and remote learning opportunities. However, 31% of school children worldwide are not accessing learning through these forms.
Taskeen thinks that offline education projects can be useful, but a lot depends on whether the school kids have access to the right stuff, like computers in schools, or if the schools aren't open, tablets at home with a power supply to charge them on. Where these aren't available, education broadcasts for TV or radio might work better. And when these aren't available,
A better strategy would be to print out openly licensed materials and distribute these sort of workbooks to students.
so you have to look at what equipment the kids can access and fit the strategy to that. Often the answer is not tablets and offline magic boxes, but where these are available, Taskeen says that the interactive element, so the games, quizzes and performance monitoring, should lead to better results. However, even where offline learning systems are a good option, there are other things to take into account.
The one aspect I'd like to talk about is the ability to curate content.
There are potential problems with a kind of educational imperialism, she says.
This content package is developed in the global north, and then you're trying to implement it in some global south country where that might not match. This is a really huge risk. I think what we need to do to avoid that is to promote locally generated content
Finally, there's a general problem in this field with a lack of good evidence in order to say which kind of projects should be scaled up.
It's really hard to talk about scalability because evidence informs whether something should be scaled. So I can go on a few studies with some anecdotal evidence. So for example, in Guatemala, there was a study done where Khan Academy content was rolled out and it was investigated as to whether this would improve learning outcomes for mathematics. And the study showed that actually there was improvement. There was 10% point increase in mathematics scores.
So there are good indications that in the right circumstances, offline education projects could work well. But Pasquin says their success or failure all comes down to the way the projects are implemented. It's the people who make it work, not the technology. People like Amish in India, Fariha in Bangladesh, and in Malawi.
Hello, I'm Francis Kioko. I'm a physics teacher at St. Michael's Girls Secondary School in Mangochi, Malawi. I've been a data courier for the World Librarian since 2017.
Francis transports data for his pupils. His shoes are the sneakers of the SneakerNet in a project called World Librarians. It's run by the University of Massachusetts in the US and a non-profit in Malawi called Shift IT. Here's how it works. First, rather than guess what the kids want to know, the World Librarians project is driven by demand.
The requests come from the